the Connaught Rangers. Was on those lonely nights in the Punjab, we sat around the hall and we spoke about old Ireland and our problems great and small. You see, these things, they much concern us, though we were far from home, us men who had adventured these foreign lands to roam. We just returned from Europe, where we fought a bloody war and lost thousands of our gallant men at Suvla and Sudel Bor. The most decorated regiment this army's ever known. We fought everybody's battles, but the battles of our own. We built this bloody empire, where on the sun it never sets. With gallantry and bravery our soldiers met their deaths. But our masters now betray us. While we are far from home, they persecute our families, our wives, our children, mothers, brothers, fathers, while we left them all alone. But it's all for England's power and glory, for England's greed and might, but far better it was for Ireland and a cause that could be right.
Welcome to everybody here today to mark again the Connaught Rangers mutiny of June in 1920. My name is Roger McCarrick. I'm president of Tubbercurry Chamber of Commerce and Community Association. It's an honorary position that I hold to represent our community at events like this afternoon, and it certainly is an honour to host you all here this afternoon. I would especially like to welcome all the relations and descendants of the mutineers who have travelled this weekend to be with us. Many of you were here 2 years ago to witness the unveiling of the Connaught Rangers Memorial here in Tubbercurry when that was unveiled by our Uachtaráin na hÉireann, Michael D. Higgins. That was a great historical event and a very emotional event for the people that were involved in it. And it was certainly enjoyed hugely by the extended family and descendants of the mutineers of that time. I would also like to welcome people that are joining us online, and this talk is being recorded for posterity, and we just like to welcome everybody looking at it either now or in the future. And in fact, our videographer for the afternoon is, we'll just say, Mary's grandson. So he's a great-great-grandson of one of the mutineers. So the continuity continues on. We also have here representation from the Connaught Rangers Association, who have done great work over the years in recording events and people from the period of the 1920 mutiny. And we have here today PJ Maloney. PJ is here. PJ has done a lot of work over the years with the association. Of course, as well as gathering here today to mark the 103rd anniversary of the death of mutineer James Daly, we are also here to listen to Professor Jyoti Atwal, who I am sure will enlighten us further on the various interpretations of the mutiny. The mutiny isn't just one story. There are a lot of sideshows before and after it. Now, Dr. Jyoti Atwal is an associate professor of modern Indian history at, and I'll try and pronounce this, Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi. And she is also an adjunct professor at the Department of History, Faculty of Arts, Humanities and Social Sciences in the University of Limerick here in Ireland. She teaches modern Indian and Irish history in JNU in New Delhi, and she has published widely on many topics in the context of the British Empire in India. Now, the book and topics that we're going to hear about this afternoon, the book and topics we're going to hear about today is India, Ireland and Anti-Imperial Struggle, Remembering the Connaught Rangers Mutiny 1920. This is a series of essays edited by Jyoti and a colleague of hers, Una O'Halping, who unfortunately cannot be here today. Now, without further ado, I will hand you over to Jyoti Atwal.
Very good afternoon to everyone, and I welcome you all to this afternoon. I'm very, very grateful to so many people for having me here, for Irish people in general, my academic friends, my CRA friends, and so I have been traveling to Ireland for almost 10 years now and researching on various aspects. But this was something special I got involved in 2019, and this began the journey to investigate the Connaught Rangers. I didn't know what Connaught Rangers were and what the mutiny was. Leave alone the mutiny, I didn't even know about it until about 2019. When I was heading to Ireland, I paid a visit to ambassador's house, to ambassador's office in New Delhi, Irish ambassador's house, and he said, "There's a centenary coming up, and I said, yeah, for what? I usually work on gender, so what do I do with this centenary?" So he took a printout of this. I was so surprised. There's been a mutiny in India, and none of us. I've been teaching for the past 23 years. I had not heard of this mutiny. I'm a modern Indian historian. If I had not heard, and I've been traveling to Ireland for so many years, I can just imagine that this mutiny, and nobody tried to explore it. And so I said, yes, this sounds fascinating, but how am I going to do it? Ambassador, let me see, I'm going to Galway. Not really the best place to do research, but let's see. And to my good luck, when I went to, something took me to the mutiny, I must say. It was a destiny or whatever. When I was working in the archives, and when I met my, where I rented the place, and my friends Finola and Gerard in Galway, they knew Sergeant P.J. Maloney from Renmore Barracks, and he was the main officer in charge of the. He's still the main officer in charge of the museum, and till I was taken to that place, I had no clue about Connaught Rangers. I had only read. And it was only through my secondary reading of Connaught Rangers that I had some notion of what this thing was. But when I was given such a fascinating tour to that museum, I went back to that so many times. I recorded it, and also I was very grateful that Sergeant Maloney actually did a little documentary for me as well, so that if I didn't understand something once, I could go back to it, and that's exactly what I did. So that is where I was actually brought to the 1920 Connaught Rangers mutiny. I'm very grateful to Sergeant Maloney here he started this journey. With him, I started this journey, and to my friends, local friends, who really assisted me and helped me in every way. And also, very, very special thanks to my friend Mary here, Mary Henry, and her husband. And of course, Mr. Roger Cormick. Thank you so much for welcoming me here in this gathering. And more than what I have to tell you, it's basically about exchange of ideas. And I would like to present before you some ideas, because this book, as you have rightly said, it's written from a very different aspect. It's Indian notion of imperialism, not just Irish, because it doesn't carry that, and it's also a documentary by. It's a commentary by historians. It's a perspective on what happened. And I think there are many perspectives. We try to incorporate even those perspectives, which we have it there. Dr. Mario Draper's essay on looking at it as a problem of logistics, it would not have happened. That rebellion was not really the aim. So that kind of narrative we do confront in history. And being an modern Indian historian, we have had mutinies in India itself. We have had 1857 mutiny, which began with the Delhi, Meerut, and North India, which was spread like fire over North India in 1857. And Nationalist School has also called it the First War of Independence. So this, of course, open to interpretations. There are historians, there are imperial historians as well, and many of them have downsized the mutinies, saying that it's just few people and so on. It could not have made a difference anyway. So while we know this narrative from the Indian experience, and we wanted to, when I came back, unfortunately pandemic began during the centenary year 2020. So the conference was planned, and when I came back, I went back to Ambassador McElduff, and he told him that yes, this is possible now. It is looking possible. I gathered a team, people, I have located, so this is happening. And he was very happy, and he gave all the support. I think that is where diplomatic and resources come in, because universities generally don't have that resource. So embassies are, very important for us that way. And I must admit that I was totally supported. The book was a support from this book came out with the support of the Irish Embassy and Foreign Department. So I'm very, very grateful to them also. Then we went ahead, but it had to happen online, and then Professor Yunona Halpin very generously agreed to be the co-editor, and as you know, he's one of the he's topmost historian of Ireland, of modern Irish history. So I was very, very fortunate that things came together. I was lucky that there are people who assisted. It's not a one-person enterprise doing this kind of book and conference. So very, very grateful to those who contributed to this. But while I was doing it and after we did it, I think there's need for another book. There's a need for another piece of work to happen. And when I met Mary Henry, I realized online that she opened up this gate for me for research about the descendants. They were all the more different question. And I somehow have entered the field of military history through Connaught Rangers. I'm so grateful to this theme that I've taken up. It has helped me a lot. Look at war widows, look at families, and so on. And these spaces which were not, which usually I didn't work on. I looked at gender question from a very different point of view. So that has been a very personally enriching journey for me as a historian, as an individual. So I thank all of you for contributing to this journey. And as far as my students are concerned, I think they're also fascinated with the fact that when we talk about James Daly, when we talk about people who were involved in the mutiny, they keep comparing, their minds work towards these comparisons, which is what we were aiming at. Creating Indo-Irish scholarship around these themes, and we want that scholars should come up. I think it's been a slow process because of pandemic and also because of the lack of resources, but we are very hopeful that in future we will get support and there will be students who will be working on these themes. I think our real investment is the students, not just us. So that's what we look forward to that. But for today, I've been very generously told I can take whatever time I would, but I would also like to interact and answer some of your questions and also take suggestions for future from you. So sorry, I hope I'm okay. Okay, so yes, the one thing which came out from the book, that it is mostly one person who, because he was executed in India, he died, he was executed, and his memory is a painful memory, for the Irish people, and also Indians, of course, thought all white people were British at that point of time. There was really no distinction, and therefore there's a very checkered past which India and Ireland share because of the military recruitments, nature of the military recruitments that were there, and some of my friends also in Ireland thought all Irish people were part of this experimental laboratory of colonialism, which I think I'm willing to challenge. It's not true. I have discovered many people, many individuals who were outside the military, of course, and Connaught Rangers is one of the main examples where the agenda of anti-colonialism was there. Of course, I have not found too much evidence. None of us have found too much evidence of how this was received amongst the Indian people. But we know that 1916 Easter Rising was not really the way the IRA, the methodology was not acceptable to Gandhi. That was one thing. But yes, the fact that Ireland was fighting for independence, that was appreciated by the leaders. One is Jawaharlal Nehru, my university is named after him. And also, he was a friend of de Valera. And when he visited here, he was also called the rebel leader of India. Now, leadership and statesman, and also adding the prefix of rebel was actually unusual. I found this interesting combination here. So this friendship, of course, is one thing, but the fact that the methodology was not violent. There was a turn of events after 1919. Prior to 1919, and half Irish lady Annie Besant was very important in Indian politics, as we know. She was the main push behind anti-imperial movement, and she styled a movement called All India Home Rule movement on the Irish experience, on the lines of the Irish experience. And she eventually thought that Indian masses could be prepared for self-rule immediately after the First World War. The hope was the British will get India independence after the First World War. There were lots of hopes, and also in Ireland, of course, Ireland used it differently. But in India as well, there was a different kind of focus. And she launched this movement, and she was also the first woman president of the Indian National Congress. So that was a method that was applied to gain popularity. But unfortunately, after 1919, things changed. The British didn't deliver. The British didn't really keep up the promises of any self-rule, any kind of liberal act or liberal. Any kind of enhancement of the legislature, powers of the Indians, etc. In fact, there was a violent very violent event of Jallianwala Bagh, 1919, where over 1,000 people were massacred, including children and women, by General Dyer. And the then governor of Punjab, Michael Dwyer, was an Irishman. So Ireland, in many ways, comes up as part of this colonial enterprise, which I thought was very heavily entrenched in the contemporary Irish historians' minds, including very, very, open-minded historians have looked at Ireland only as an extension. And of course, the British side also thinks, that they were part of their enterprise. They were working for them, so they had to obviously enhance and extend their interests. But we have found something else when we talk about. But we found that this was not the case. There are so many levels of relationships between India and Ireland politically. And this is still very early stage, what you see here. So James Daly naturally came up as the first person, and the way the archive the way museum has been designed now is mostly one person, who is James Daly, who has been documented in the prison museum at Dalshai. So I was lucky to visit this. I got an opportunity to visit this Dakshai Museum. Dakshai is the place where all the mutineers were kept. And as we know, the ratio was the soldiers, most of them were, whosoever was sentenced to death, their sentences were commuted, they were sent back, and after around 1922, they were sent back. 1921, they were sent back. And jail sentences were also commuted, and of course, this was disbanded in 1923, I think, disbanded in 1922. So it was not as though there was much knowledge about the Connaught Rangers in India. I don't really come across the mutiny or about the Connaught Rangers in the Indian newspapers, sadly. Especially mutinies, so any detail about mutiny was suppressed. I'm sure this was a deliberate attempt to keep it as a secret. Whatever correspondence was going on about execution, trial, whatever, it was no trial, it was execution, and sentences were passed. So I think there is some more work to be done in the British Library, which of course, again, resources come in. To stay in London, we have to send a scholar, and so everything depends on, we don't have all the resources in India. But what I think was interesting was when I visited Dakshai, although James Daly is documented, the rebellion, the mutiny is also documented in one board. I'll show you that in a while. I'm just going to show that I think. I think I'll finish with the slides first, and then I'll quickly go on. Then I'll go on to the pictures, because pictures can't be put on these slides right now. So I just have separate pictures. Okay. Now this is a very interesting picture, which is already there in the Renmo Barracks. So I'm sure many of you would have visited Renmo Barracks. It's fascinating museum which you need to visit. So the recruitment, of course, was one of the main highlights of that museum, and this, okay, these are very interesting items which are displayed, the silver cup and the drum, which I found was very interesting. More interesting was this. More interesting is this dress, the uniform, where there's a little elephant in here. And how we read this is that there was a need to orientalize the soldiers first. Tell them, give them pride, you're part of this empire, you're building an empire, you're exercising that. And so that they take pride in that. And I'm also told that, Connaught Rangers had, the soldiers would have, the mutiny was a problem because the soldiers had such pride in themselves of serving, so that this how do you then read the rebellion as a Republican act? How do you do that? That becomes a kind of a historical problem, a very, very important issue for us historians to deal with. But the scheme was very clear for the British that first we need to inculcate the pride of the empire, make them feel that they are part of this empire and enterprise, to give them a uniform which had elephant, very imperial signs, Also, this is what we would nowadays call cultural soft diplomacy, when you have symbols only, there is no hardcore imperialism, but there is a soft, display of belonging to a certain community. Okay. This is a letter which is there in the book. It is a very short proof of the fact that there could be no mercy, because there was a request for James Daly's sentence to be commuted, it was refused on the grounds that this cannot be done. This just cannot be done because it set a very wrong precedent for the other soldiers, and a mutiny can just not be accepted. And so, because we want to discipline the army in future, so his execution becomes important. He was a ringleader, and he needs to be executed. So, it was we find such letters also in case of Kevin Barry, who was Halpin's great uncle, and the IRA. He joined the IRA, and he had the similar kind of there was no mercy that was given, and so there are these letters which are there to set an example, and especially if it happens in the military, in the army, it cannot be pardoned at all. This court martial has to go on. Now, when we were looking at the narratives in this book, we had to confront the narrative of how this mutiny was a non-serious mutiny. It was not, the one charge was that, there was drinking going on. Now, there's drinking going on in, I don't know, but even now, drinking cannot be a reason for a mutiny or an upheaval. So I don't know, whenever we go to, even today we go to different places in cantonments and areas. I've been to different parts of the camps, and I've stayed in some of the places, not very sensitive ones, but still some of the places in India, even today. We know that alcohol is a common thing. It's nothing that which will create a resentment or which will create change person's minds towards service, etc. I think this is something one has to really, that narrative cannot stand really. So that has been given as a narrative, and I think even Mary Henry had refuted in her essay here that this was a charge she had been, by some of the historians, Sam Pollock and others, who have killed Feather and who have that being one reason. So we thought this mutiny needs to be taken seriously, and it was, whether it was entirely a Republican assertion or not, that needs to be investigated systematically. And we found this very interesting book of sketches, which Professor Thomas Bartlett told us about. So it was so interesting to have him on the board. This is a scrapbook of sketches done by different prisoners who were Irish, soldier prisoners. They were kept away from the Indian ones. They were actually isolated. That's what we feel. That's why there was no news about them in the local newspapers, or the locals didn't know about why. They were totally kept away from the locals. And I think some more work is needed to understand the seclusion of the prisoners in India, how they were not how they were kept away from Indians, so that they seemed to be because they were rebellious, and also there were separate jails for Europeans, like separate hospitals, like separate. So there was this prison apartheid also very much in place during the British period. So the scrapbook is very interesting. You can see, I will not go into details, but in the introduction we have tried to explain how these soldiers had a great political understanding of imperialism. And this is not one or two sketches, at least 10, 15 of them. And we've got all of them. Most of them we've put here. These are like in form of a greeting card or something sent to the local priest. We have included image of a church that was opened built by the salaries which came from these Irish soldiers. And nothing much is known there. Even the curator whom I'm in touch with does not really know that much. But he's already, he's done remarkable work in just keeping whatever is there, all that has been preserved. It has not, so we can't expect anything much more right now. But and these are some of the very important sketches in the book. Some of them, most of them are political. Around Christmas, they're talking about Uncle Sam, Winston Churchill, about the other aspects of sorry. Yeah, so for me personally, this remembrance years were very important, and we happen to be a part of this privilege of actually seeing this 10 years of decade of centenaries being funded by the government on one side. It was one-sided, of course. Indian government, of course, it's an interesting enterprise. The Indian ambassador, we showed him this book. He was very appreciative of this outcome. And there was also the Indian Military Heritage Festival to which we took this, and it was displayed, and the publisher had republished this book with black and white pictures to make it a little cheap. So this is already in the Indian market. There is already an Indian interest in this, and also there's something called Center for Military Research in India. They have also bought this book and they've kept it. So there is a lot of awareness now amongst Indian researchers about it. However, this brings us to the important fact of national memory and internationalization. That how Ireland tried to internationalize and globalize its connections during the last 10 years. I think this is important, and I think that's why the funding was also done for the Indian thing. But what does it mean for us as historians, as citizens and nation? I think it's so important that that in the present day where we are talking about globalization and internationalism, we also look at the transnational relationships. So while this was a very silent kind of a rebellion or mutiny about which Indians didn't really know. Indians had no idea what was happening inside that prison where all these Irish prisoners were. They didn't even know that. I think more needs to be found out, but this is really interesting, and there has really been no effort to look at the Indian side, the Indian perspective. So, but I will come to how it has been curated at this point, this museum. That will be something which interests you. So, just before that, just showing you some of the interesting transnational documents here. This is the very interesting book in 1920 which De Valera wrote. This was actually a long speech. It's actually not a book, but a long speech to the Ghadar Party in USA. When he went to America, he spoke to the other group which was agitating for Indian independence, and it was a radical group of people, of Sikhs, and mostly from Punjab. It had become a very important plank of foreign aid to the Indian cause of Indian independence. Apart from the Gandhian way, which was a strong parallel movement in support of constitutionalism. So this booklet is very important. We often use it to say that there was one. This is the most interesting and important time when De Valera thought India could achieve its independence through the means that Ireland was using, the same means that Ireland was using. This is a book which was Dan Breen's autobiography, My Struggle for Irish Freedom. It's translated into Hindi in 1930s. We have no idea how this happened. So this was doing rounds in India. So there was already material for revolution that was going on, revolution, radicalism, radical movements, which was already going on. So I have no doubt that British would not even let this news of the mutiny would not have been let out at all by 1920s into the Indian newspapers or anywhere. So it was such a silent uh, movement. So there is a small museum inside Dakshai prison. The prison itself is a museum actually. So which is very interesting because there are very few visitors. And when somebody comes to Kasoli, Kasoli is the name of that hill station, British summer hill station, very near to Shimla, which you must have heard the name of Shimla. And this is very close to that, and just there about half hour from there, Shimla. So the prison is very much intact and maintained, and the person who was giving I mean, it's not one person but several. They take rounds in giving us the visitors, mostly like tourists, not really professional historians. It's basic knowledge of how this prison is anti-colonial. It was a site of anti-colonial rebellion, but in that flow, because it had several prisoners, Indian prisoners as well, who had rebelled, they were also imprisoned there. So the jail itself is a site of this rebellion. It is all the jail itself has had to be maintained. Apart from that, we also had Gandhi's assassinator there for I think 1 or 2 nights. He stayed there as a prisoner after the death of Gandhi, and then this prison, of course, closed. So this is the origin of the Dakshai Hills as to where the name comes from. It was originally, there are lots of monkeys around. So in fact, when we went there were monkeys and monkeys all over. There are places in India where there are lots of monkeys. So, but some mythological association has been done with that. So the jail wants to imagine itself as an ancient city. It's ancient Hindu city, but so it has to have an indigenous origin of that city, which is very important for this jail. And so it talks about this Hanuman, who's the lord of the army of half human, half monkey. It's an ancient mythological construct, and he's imagined as being loyal to Lord Ram. So this is the origin of the city itself, the hills, as we may call them. So these are the hills. One full slide on the hill is given there, and it is here that supposed to have stayed there. Lord Ram is supposed to have come, and this particular god is supposed to have flown over this place. So he's supposed to have blessed it. So next is the idea that it was a medieval prison. There's a medieval idea of how it developed in the medieval times. Okay, it's an old photograph. It is probably founded in 1847. So it has this links with the coming of the British, and before that it was it was opened with the help of Maharaja of Patiala, Punjab, because there was a lot of rajas in that area. But prior to that, there was also a medieval history to it, where probably there was some stamp that was put on the prisoners. That's why it's called Dag Shahi, the royal stamp. Shahi means royal and Dag means stamp. So there was some name associated with this kind of background of the city, and why the British chose the prison to be there. Uh, because we often find that the British were using the old functional prisons or non-functional prison spaces to have, because they were nicely isolated from the city, isolated from the rest of the population. They could not have keep the soldiers in cantonment places like Delhi or Bombay or any other important cities which were, so that they didn't mix with the population. Probably that was the idea. So, and especially the Irish contingent, of course, by 1920. So this is a nice, very nice, I was pleasantly surprised to see this in the prison. These three. One is here, left side, James Daly, and this, I think Glasnevin commemoration stone, somebody has taken a photo, probably from the internet, and turned it into a slide, into a banner. So this left side is, and Martyrs for Ireland. So this is the Connaught Rangers, so you can see the memorabilia and this, the logo. I'll take you to another slide, clearer one. So this is the Jawan, or the person who's showing me around the place, and he's very fondly telling me this one another rebellion from the soldiers mutinied from Ireland and so on. So he was enthusiastically telling me about it. So their memory is that of anti-colonial movement, and Ireland is there in their memories. Especially this, but he didn't know the name of Connaught Rangers, but he said one person who was also a rebel was shot dead, and they have preserved the place where it might have been shot. Okay, so the idea that martyrs, what interested me was this whole thing about martyrs for Ireland. And it says 22-year-old James Daly was imprisoned and so on. And sorry, this was actually quite high. So when I was taking a picture, it was shaking. So I'm sorry, it's not very clear. And also briefly about how the remains were taken back, repatriated to Ireland and so on. And just below that is the visit of Mahatma Gandhi. Now that is a very interesting connection between Mahatma Gandhi and the mutiny, which Anand Sethi, the curator, keeps telling me that yes, Mahatma Gandhi visited this place. I said, where is the documentary proof? Can you give it to me? Can you give me the proof that he visited? And he said Mahatma Gandhi wanted to spend a night in this prison just to support the Irish prisoners. I said, if you can find this out from anywhere, this will be a real story, because we really need to know. This will turn the whole narrative, of what the mutiny is. So unfortunately, no, he doesn't have any proof, but I don't think we will have proof. It's not easy, because that would not have been announced openly. That's probably his decision. And there's a room. I'll just show that room to you in a while.
In Ireland, we have a saying that you should never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Yes, absolutely. That's one. Yes, but unfortunately, historians have to work with some. Yeah, the arrest of the Irish soldiers, Mahatma Gandhi to rush, prompted Mahatma Gandhi to rush to Dalshai to make sorry, this is so badly taken picture by me. To make on the spot assessment, Mahatma Gandhi was a friend and admirer of the great leader Eamon de Valera. Further, the Indian independence took great inspiration from the Irish one. So when they say took inspiration from the Irish one, I think there was like I said, there was some inspiration in the sense that they were looking at the Irish, what they're doing, and there was a revolutionary group that was very inspired by them. But as far as Mahatma Gandhi is concerned, I think it would be a little too far going too far to say he was supportive of anything. But maybe he was sympathetic to the soldiers. That's something which I would, you know,
Well, just suppose all was indicated that the natives that looked after the prisoners were sympathizers of Mahatma Gandhi, and that is how Gandhi got involved.
possibly, yes, yes. That could have been there. Actually, the story is yet to be told. I mean, we are not. That's why I just brought this to show to you that this is what has been documented. So it's open to interpretation, really, absolutely. I would. Okay. So it's not only this. This is the old jail, old old jail where this is the place where he might have been executed inside this. So there are different kind of rooms. This was a punishment which was given for a prisoner who offended who violated rules. So he was given a standing punishment of standing for a very long time between two very narrow spaces in the jail. So he would have to stand for many hours. Very weird kind of punishments which British came out with. So. Well, this was one painting I found. I think Mr. Anand Sethi was very inspired by this, the book and the contribution he made to the book also. Because I found him later on after we finished the book. We found him. We really didn't find him earlier, so I roped him to write an article for us. So he has taken some, he probably commissioned some paintings and so on. So this is one of them. This is a later edition after the conference. Now these are the sketches from our book, which have been put up in the museum now. The book is also in the church. It has a rosary on it. He sent me the picture of that, but unfortunately, when I visited, I could not really go to the church as it was closed for that time being, and I plan to visit later on. So this is the jail museum, which is very nicely curated, and it has series of sorry, just going on. There is a okay. There is also a room which was designated as Gandhi. This is where Gandhi stayed. It had heating, it had other provisions. It was a slightly cleaner cell. Probably it was a political prisoner cell in that place. And otherwise, they have memories. The soldiers had memory of Christmas and so on, and they drew these sketches, which I can circulate the book. Want to see the colored sketches, the scrapbooks which they drew. We don't know the names of individual sketches. We don't know that, but this was there. So in the end, in the conclusion, what I'd like to say without taking much of your time is that one, for the memory purpose, I think there's so much work to be done in India and Ireland to find out more about this, to find out more about what happened to these, how they lived in jail and how they spent their time there, and also to change the narrative of the rebellion. We've tried our best in the book to change the narratives, not only to change the narratives, but to bring the narratives also together. And also for this, we also wanted that the story of the individuals, the relatives, should also come forth, not just the prison and not just the lodging part or the visiting part, and but how they are remembered in India is very important. And what I was pleased to see is that they are remembered as martyrs. not as rebels or not as prisoners and so on, which means they're put at par with other martyrs for freedom, whether they fought for Ireland. So there's a general appreciation, I think, in the narrative for anyone who fought for independence, whether it was prisoners. The other problem that we face is that in Ireland or India, it becomes, at least in the Renmore barracks, we don't have the mutiny documented. It's not documented. The mutiny doesn't figure. Am I right? It's
just a small. There's only a small
thing, yeah. So probably one can expand on that a little bit, and because now, even in India, this whole thing about mutinies being celebrated in post-colonial times is a problem, because mutinies cannot be part of the army museums, military museums. It becomes difficult to understand. But if they were anti-colonial and they were also violent, probably, not so violent or violent, they were about disobeying. I think in colonial India or Ireland, it's become difficult to, it has been easier in Ireland to accept the mutiny, but not so it's easy for the Indians. For example, in 1940s, there was this INA trials, the naval mutiny, which is by the Navy. That found that was not completely supported by the nationalist leaders of those times. And I think same problem we had with Ireland also, but in the post-colonial Ireland after independence, I think the narrative has changed, and there has been a great deal of acceptance about who's the martyr, who are the real martyrs. So in India also, it's slowly changing. I see so many in this military festival. I saw many inclusions of the mutinies, because one mutiny which is accepted is 1857 in India. There is no dispute. It shook the empire to some extent, because they thought Hindus, Muslims won't unite. We can just divide. They are basically rich landowners, and Hindu population is different, and so on. But instead, the Mughal Empire was consolidated. The symbolic of the Mughal Empire, Bahadur Shah Zafar, was declared as Emperor of India after mutiny. And so they packed off his bags to Burma forever. And they put him under exile so as to remove the symbol of power. He was very old when they actually declared him as. So it's interesting how anti-imperial, how anti-imperialist movements are understood in post-colonial India and Ireland. So I hope there'll be more research. We'll get some more research done in future. But so far we've tried our best. Some of my colleagues who in Ireland, England, and India to try do at least one book on it. But we look forward to more books. Thank you.
For the very first time, because of Professor Atwal, she gave us the opportunity to have our stories heard. So we're forever grateful for that. Thank you so much. I'd like to say thank you to the White family from Dublin who came here. They've been coming down almost on a regular basis now. Maura, I'd like to introduce Maura. Maura is a blood descendant of James Daly that was executed. And we're very privileged to have you with us, Maura. Thank you so much. We'd like to thank PJ, who has been so helpful. Anytime we made contact with PJ, we're always looking for something. So we'll always be appreciative of your input, PJ. Thank you so much. And Catherine and Paul, they always come from Cork, and it's not easy. They drove up this morning, the whole way from Cork. Many thanks again. Very special thanks to Roger and his wife, Patricia, and his sister, Grania. Thank you very much for the help out tonight. It's very much appreciated. And to you who have come to listen to Professor Atwal, thank you very much. We really appreciated it. Thank you.